welcome back to the show. My name is Chad, and today we are going to be talking to Randy Tischler, who is involved with the Baltimore Comic Con, one of my favorite Comic Cons, although I haven't unfortunately been able to make it in years. But he is here, and we're going to talk about the Ringo Awards. So let me bring him in. We'll find out about him and the Ringo Awards, which are awarded every year at the show. Hey, Randy, how's it going?
Good, Chad. How are you doing?
I'm here. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, how are you involved with the Baltimore Comic Con and the Ringo Awards?
Yeah, so I've been working with the show really probably since year two. Very, outer limits at that point, kind of helping with tips on how to improve the website and stuff like that. And slowly over the course of time, uh, they roped me into more responsibilities, starting with press relations. And some of that's my own doing, quite frankly. I sort of saw opportunities for improvement and just stepped in and fixed things. So at some point, and this goes back quite a while, because we had the Harvey Awards for 10 years,
Mhm.
and they left 7 years ago, I think, 8 years ago. But I had been doing or helping with the Harveys, and we did a lot in terms of sort of automating some of that stuff, bringing it into the 21st century, arguably the 20th century in some areas. And so we kind of walked away with a lot of lessons learned. The folks that ran or that own the Harvey Awards are up in New York City, and they decided that the New York Comic Con was a better home for that, given their proximity, the size of that show, et cetera, and so forth. So it left. They were informed that it was going to leave Baltimore, and there was a pretty loud uproar from the attendees of the awards ceremony. They wanted to make sure that something continued to happen at Baltimore because it was their Thanksgiving, is how they phrased it.
Well, when I was there in 2015, I think it was the last year. I was there in 2014 and 15. I think 15 was the last year of the Harvey Awards, if I remember correctly. And I remember I attended the ceremony, and it was a great time. And I was kind of surprised when they did it did shift over to the New York, um, and then my son was born in September, and since then, you guys just never contact me when it comes to scheduling.
Yeah, I know that.
But tell us about the Ringo Awards and how you guys kind of got to replace, not I guess replace is the right word, the Harvey Awards, for the Baltimore show.
Yeah, so we, like I said, it was clear that people wanted to continue to come to some sort of an event on Saturday night of that nature. So the show promoter, Mark Nathan, brainstormed a bunch of different angles and, kind of looked into a couple of different things. And he struck on this Mike Wieringo idea. Mike was a friend of the show, as were his friends and family and whatnot. And of course, he was such an influential artist in his era, and really since then, really kind of changed the trajectory of art at that time. And so Mark went down to Richmond, I believe it was, to meet with Matt Wieringo, Mike's brother, and pitch him this idea. He bought him dinner, and he kind of said, "Hey, I have this idea. What do you think about this?" And immediately Matt was like, "Yes, I'm all in. I love the idea. Let's do it." He reached out to Mike's friends, Mark Wade, Craig Russo, Todd Zago, um, and everybody was amenable to the idea, loved the idea of honoring Mike, keeping his memory going. And so we put this thing together. We kind of took the lessons learned from the Harveys. We recreated, in our opinion, a better ballot, a more effective way to go about determining what the ballot looked like as well as the winners, and put it out into the world. And the reaction was loud and strong. People really got behind the idea. The voting was amazing that first year. I mean, the murderer's row of talent, of creators that were those initial submissions was just crazy. Brad Meltzer was like top 3 or whatever. Just in that first set of submissions really kind of blew us away. So it was a very successful endeavor, has continued to be so. You've certainly seen some of the impacts of what we have done in terms of creators in the space getting additional work. You see our Ringo nominated, Ringo award winning kind of stuff in bios and on blurbs and whatnot. So it's been great.
So what? How did you guys? How do you guys set yourself aside from the Harveys and the Eisners
Yeah.
as your own their awards type of honor?
Yeah. We have a couple of distinguishing features. Um, Kind of similar to the Eisners, we have a jury, but our jury behaves differently than them. Everybody on the jury, well, let me step back. So the nomination phase of the Ringo Awards is open to everybody. So fans, retailers, accountants, anybody who's a fan of comics or adjacent to comics in some form or fashion can submit a ballot. So that's the public vote. 2 of every slot on the final ballot comes from the public vote. So that's a big differentiator from the other awards. And we did that because when we were doing the Harveys, we would see every year, hey, this is only for pros. You can't vote in this if you're not a pro. People didn't care. They still submitted a ballot because I don't know. It made them feel better. I have no idea. We didn't count them, but we did recognize the fact. And so that's why we have that element in the nomination phase. The remaining slots on the final ballot come from the jurors. And it is not, they don't have to come to a mutual agreement on all of the things that they like. I believe that is how the Eisners work, and that is not how we work. There is a point system associated with their choices, their top 7 choices, and it is sort of an aggregation of all of the jurors' votes that determine what their slots consist of. So it makes for a really, really interesting and strong final ballot. We had complaints off and on over the course of time on the Harveys about, ballot stuffing and who got on there and whatnot. And that has not been an issue at all since we have changed the system. It's frustrating from time to time because there are great books that just can't make their way onto the ballot because there's just not enough space for everything. But we're pretty happy with how it has worked thus far.
And so, and there's also, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's also a couple categories that the fans are able to nominate and then vote.
That's right. The fan favorite categories, it kind of goes back to that, what I was mentioning before about the fans submitting votes where they really didn't have a voice. It was clear that it's important to them, right, to participate in this and to have a say. And so the fan favorite awards are just a majority rules, happens during the nomination phase. And if you get out there and rock the vote, then you can get into those 5 final categories. And we do award those every year. We've tried to make it a surprise to everybody. We've caught a lot of people off guard, so that's been fun. Because there's no final ballot for them to see, right? All of a sudden, there's like, hey, you get to come up on stage. And we can't always pull that off a lot of times, especially because a lot of the international community comes out to play in that space. And so, somebody from Malaysia or whatever, it's a little bit difficult for them to pop over to Baltimore for an evening and,
Right.
enjoy an award ceremony that they don't know that they have a part in. Yeah, we have 5 fan-oriented categories: favorite hero, favorite villain, favorite news, favorite series, new talent, and publisher.
So, for you, as someone who is, works with Baltimore and the Ringo Awards, are you? I assume you're a comic book fan. What's your kind of origin story for your introduction into this fandom?
Oh yeah. Well, that's how I got involved with Baltimore in the first place. I was a Marvel zombie. Anything that was Marvel, that was what I was looking for. Um, More of a completionist than a perfectionist, so I had quite a large collection. I have divested myself of that since that time. Just was getting too much. And uh, that said, part of the joy of being in this administrative role for the Ringo Awards is that I get review copies of all of the submitted materials for the jurors.
Mhm.
So, and my taste certainly changed over the course of time anyway, in terms of not just reading Marvels, but we have submissions, and this is something I didn't talk about before. We have submissions from the publisher community. That first year we did not do this, and everybody was kind of on their own recognizance to go out and figure out what did you like this past year, and if you don't know, go out to a local comic shop and figure it out. So that was a little challenging, but we had publishers reaching out to us and saying, "Hey, can I give you books to give to the jurors to read because we think our book is worth consideration," and they might not have read it. So we added that element the second year, and participation has been spectacular. I mean, really, not every single publisher does. Some just don't do it by their nature, but we get from micro press, micro publishers to the very, very large, and even the book industry that has moved into the graphic novel space has participated as well. So I read a lot of different stuff from a lot of different publishers and a lot of different genres, and it's a great exercise for me. It's daunting because it's 500-600 books in a pretty short period of time,
Yeah.
um, and I don't have to read them all cover to cover. And admittedly, I don't read every single one, but I do try to read almost everything cover to cover. Time permitting.
Well, following that up, um, which of the nominees, pick a category and which ones that you read, which ones kind of stick out for you?
Well, I mean, it varies every year, and there is a category called the Spirit Award that is awarded every year by the perennial jurors, and those are Mike's friends and family.
Hmm.
And it was interesting. It's happened before, but it was interesting this year. I got done with the book they had chosen. Didn't think about the fact that it was the book they had chosen. I was like, man, this is a really good book. What is this book? And I realized, oh yeah, they picked it. But that has happened before as well. The year that Superman smashes the Klan, I think it was what it was called. The
Yeah, yeah, that was Gene Ha.
Gene Luen Yu, Gene
Yeah, yeah. Sorry about that.
Yang, Gene
Yes,
Luen
you're
Yang.
right.
Yeah. So Gene was a juror that year, and he had said, "Hey, I'd love to do this. I don't want to be considered for any of the categories, though. So if any of the other jurors put my name in the ring, I just, I think that doesn't pass the sniff test, and I don't want to be considered." And DC submitted that book for consideration that year, and I read it, and I was like, "Oh my God, Gene, this is the best thing that I have read in a long time." It was a really good book.
Mhm, it
Uh,
was.
and the perennial jurors picked it, and I was like, oh God, what am I going to do here? So I called you, and I was like, look, I know you told me you didn't want to get any sort of recognition this year, given that you were a juror, but look, this happened. Are you okay with accepting this? This had nothing to do with the other jurors. This was completely independent of the nomination process. They came to the conclusion, not having any idea that you were part of the juror pool. So fortunately, he accepted it. Was well deserved, and yeah, every once in a while you hit on a book like that.
So, and maybe I missed it. Did they announce the jury for the awards? Because
Yes.
I know. Okay, I may just have missed it. Who's this year's jury? If you can.
Oh God, you're gonna put me on the spot. So it's Alan Gill, who's a retailer, um, Jamal Eigel,
Okay.
Sam Maggs, Annie Wu,
Mm,
and Bob Greenberger.
okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
and we do try, and we're very cognizant of how we select people. We want people from different segments of the community, as well as different genders, different sexualities, different races, whatever, just so that we're not all a bunch of, middle to late age white guys.
Hmm.
It's very easy to go that direction. Same with, the guest list.
Hmm.
And it doesn't represent what's out on the street today in terms of what's being published and, who's actually um, creating the content out there.
Yeah, because I know. I think it was 2001. I know John Suntress, the host of Word Balloon, and I tend to, we kind of do a yearly thing just because he's busy, I'm busy. But I know one year he served as the as a judge, so um, you know, I can see, and just looking at the panels over the year, I can you do get a very diverse group of judges to um, judge.
Yeah. Yeah, because we don't really want, we don't want a ballot that's, everything is DC superhero stuff. Everything is Marvel superhero stuff, or,
Mhm.
whatever. I'm kind of picking on the capes crowd, and that's not
Nice.
necessarily fair. But you could see how that might happen because people do have their prejudices, and so we shy away from that. And we've
Mhm.
been, if you look at the ballots since our inception, there's an amazing amount of diversity in terms of publishers and styles, types of work, whatever. So that's been great.
Now, is and it may be too late for people going, but is the ceremony is also open for the public to purchase tickets to? Because I know the first year I went, I met Mark Nathan at the Baltimore Con, and he was like, oh, and he told me about when the Harvey Awards were creating the Charles Schultz Award, and the Gail Simone was going to be kind of the MC, and so. But and so then the second year, I think I was sitting at one of the tables with Ryan Brown, and he was there going, I don't know why I'm in the same category as Chips Zdarsky because he's going to win. So, but I and if when I if, whenever I make it to Baltimore, I'm definitely going to try to make it to the Ringos. Is it the same type of atmosphere and kind of a reception before, and then kind of everybody moves in and
Yes. Yeah. And to answer your question, yes, we do have a very limited number of tickets available to the public. This is, in my opinion, this is the hidden gem of the Baltimore Comic Con because really very few people know about it. The people that stumble upon it, once they start going, they never stop going. We have kind of the same pool of people that are buying the public tickets every year, and it is definitely for the fan who really appreciates the industry and knows who the players are and wants to hear a little insider pool when they're in the room. But we start out with a cocktail hour at 7 o'clock,
Mhm.
and you get to hobnob with the nominees, the creators, that whoever gets to invited to the event, which is pretty cool in and of itself. And then it's a nice dinner. It's a crab cake dinner, and you're seated either with or near, again, some of the guests and the
Yeah.
nominees and whatnot. And then the ceremony starts at 9 o'clock, and it's we try and keep it under a couple hours, and fun stories, funny stories, some heartfelt remembrances from time to time. Certainly, those who knew Mike, if they get a time up at the microphone, they tend to relay some stories that were either heartfelt or funny about Mike because he was a character. And then there's a huge swag bag every year. There's this Oscars style swag bag that is going to weigh you down, but it's a great selection of stuff from the contributing publishers.
Well, I remember the Harvey Awards swag bags. So that those, if it's anything, I'm sure it's like that. Then it's always nice. Um, so, is there anything else that you would kind of like to mention about the Ringos or the Baltimore Con in general? I mean, the thing I love about the Baltimore Con is it's comic book based. I mean, New York is fine, but you have all the entertainment stuff, and it's huge. Baltimore Con is always the few times that I've been has always been one of my favorite shows to attend because it's comics and the comic creators are there and they interact with you. So, what else do you have to say to sell the show?
Yeah, no, you're right, Chad. I mean, this started out 25 years ago as a hotel show, right? Traditional comic book show with a bunch of dealers in the room and people going through long boxes and back issues and looking at things off the rack and whatnot. And we had, I don't know, 5, 8, whatever it was, pretty small number of guests that year. We're still doing the same thing. It's just much larger in scale and scope. We've obviously added a bunch of elements as the course of time has moved on because there's demand for meeting a couple of media guests. There's demand for gaming. There's demand for cosplay content. And that's just kind of the direction that the shows have taken in general. But to your point, we are absolutely a comics focused show. We have, in and around 200 comic book artists, writers, inkers, pencilers, colorists, editors, whatever, as guests in the room, in addition to the people that happen to come on a pro pass, because we're not stingy about those. And if you are a comics lover, we are the show for you.
And I think one of my favorite moments of the last time I was there was going to a panel and listening to Mark Waid and Ramona Fradon just chat about writing comics and writing Metamorpho and all that. So that was a very fun to see. So again, like I said, I know it's in 2 weeks almost,
Yeah,
a little over 2 weeks. Can people still purchase tickets?
Yes, our online ticket sales should be available throughout the weekend. As I mentioned before, there are a limited number of tickets to the Ringos. If that is something that you are interested in doing as a fan, if that sounds like something that you want to do, I would not hesitate. It's a great evening. It's a lot of fun. It's a good meal, but it's a really cool event. And I say that as a fan because when I started doing the Harvey Award stuff, like I didn't know what it was. I mean, I was aware of it, but I didn't really understand what I was getting myself into. And they were like, hey, thanks for your help this year. Do you want to come to the ceremony? I was like, okay, sure, I'll do that. And I just had a blast. I had a ball, just sitting there listening to everything happening. I think Joe King stole my seat when I got up to use the restroom at some point. So that was kind of cool. It's a great event. And in terms of the overall tickets for the show, like I said, you can get general admission and VIP tickets throughout the weekend. There are a couple of limited availability items. Actually, I don't know if any of those are available now that I think about it. I think I will stop talking because I think all the limited availability things have already sold out. So everything else. Oh, no, that's not true. There is a Jim Lee, Lucas Lee Garza signing that got added for Friday, and there's a small number of tickets for that. So if you missed out on your Jim Lee opportunity and you wanted to see him and get some exclusive merch, there are a few tickets left for that category. So I would not hesitate.
Well, sounds good. I want to thank you for taking the time today to talk about the show and the awards ceremony. And one day I hope to make it back to Baltimore
We hope to see you.
for the show. And again, like I said, it was actually, I think it was my first, when I started covering shows, it was my first large show. And it's one that I've wanted to return to every year. Just, when having the kid in September, it's like, couldn't we just, waited a little longer. but
Uh,
but
I had the same problem. The Ringo Awards this year is on my oldest son's birthday. But
uh,
fortunately, at this point in my life, he is an adult and he doesn't live in this area anymore. So I will give him a call and wish him a happy birthday.
all right. Well, have a great time this year at the show and the awards, and hopefully, we'll chat again in the future about the show and the awards next year.
Sounds good, Chad. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thank you. And where can people are you on social media, or where can they follow Baltimore Comic Con on socials or in the Ringo Awards?
Yeah, so we are pretty much everywhere. Certainly, the Baltimore Comic Con is Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, YouTube, Snapchat. What am I missing? Whatever. I mean, we're kind of everywhere. The Ringos are on the big four: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Blue Sky, and that's kind of where we've limited our exposure there. But please follow us on both. If you're looking for further information on the show, go to BaltimoreComicCon.com. All the details are available there.
And if for some reason you can't don't make it to the show or the awards, or we'll be definitely be posting all the winners following the awards ceremony, and look forward to seeing what else everybody has to offer for the next year.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, and it was great chatting with you.
You too, Chad. Thank you.
All right. Great.